And my colleague Susan Tehrani is, of course, with us, tracking all the developments from New York. So, Susan, at this moment, we've got a two-window on our screens with the American Air Force One plane and also the Russian president's plane on the tarmac in the joint base Elmendorf-Richardson in Alaska. As we await the two presidents to, of course, step out. This is a big moment in international diplomacy with ramifications for the global security architecture and also for the global economy. Give us a sense of, how this is playing out within the American political system per se, because this is the biggest meeting that Donald Trump has had so far in his second term as the president.
Yeah, well, you have that group of the American public that absolutely thinks Vladimir Putin is evil, bloodthirsty, and there should be no concessions. They're upset that he's even coming on American soil. But then you have a more realist crowd and those that are looking at what's happening in Ukraine and Russia and are just hoping that an end to the conflict would be near. And they believe that President Trump might be the best mediator to do that, considering the fact that since Russia invaded Ukraine, there really hasn't been a full-fledged effort by any country to try to bring these two together, sit them at the negotiating table, or a country that had the power to do so, until President Trump really tried to make this goodwill effort. So, they're just like anything else, American public is very polarized on this issue. But I think what they're looking at most, as Americans always do, which is natural, they're looking at their pocketbooks. They're wondering whether or not these secondary tariffs, the sanctions that are going to be imposed on third-party countries, and even on Russia itself, how is it going to affect the United States economically moving forward? And whether or not, ultimately it's to the U.S. benefit to try to get a negotiated settlement one way or the other because of the economic ramifications, for example, on the tariffs that the United States recently put on India. They know that this is ultimately going to affect the American economy as well. So some look at it through the lens of the economy. Some just want this bloodshed to end. The war has been ongoing. We hear reports that, both sides make some advances and then they push back the bloodshed, the images of the war. And people want this to end. Right. And there are also, those that are concerned that if it doesn't end, then how much is the United States going to be involved? Okay, we're going to give weapons to Europe. They're going to buy it. They're going to give it to Ukraine. But again, the United States has continued to be involved in this fight, even though if it's not its own fight. So in terms of that aspect of it and security as well, Americans are watching. And I think it's very important. It's symbolic that you have someone like Putin come on American soil and for the United States to sort of offer this olive branch, if you may, and try to find some kind of betterment of ties, even bilaterally, not just regarding Ukraine. So yeah, everyone is watching very closely.
Right, Susan, as we continue to keep a close eye on the developments and also the expectations that have been running high. There's also that interesting aspect, like we were discussing earlier, of the symbolism attached. Also the statements that have been coming in from the two sides. Let's also talk about, that question that has been raised in the run-up to this highly anticipated meeting as to what happens if U.S. President Donald Trump comes to the table with those expectations and things do not go along those lines, So we also earlier, a while ago, got an indication of what happens in that scenario. In fact, in a way, a part of the answer where U.S. President Donald Trump, in fact, it was indicated that he will be walking away if there's no deal. Let's just speak in greater detail about what that tells us about the expectations that the president is coming forth with.
Yeah, I think, we talked about symbolism as well really quickly, Molly. You're looking at this tarmac, you're looking at the red carpet, but you're also looking at these F-22 planes. And under normal circumstances, if a Russian plane was coming over the skies of Alaska, these military planes would be sort of chasing that Russian plane away. But today, you see those F-22s lined up. First of all, an indication to Vladimir Putin that America won the Cold War. And second of all, sort of greeting the Russian plane into Alaska instead of chasing them away. Listen, President Trump has set low expectations, but he's made it no secret that he's going to be very disappointed if this meeting does not yield any result, and he finds out that Putin is just negotiating for the sake of negotiations to push back the sanctions, to push back more tariffs, and is buying time. So he said he's going to walk away. And what walking away means ultimately, while he has been asked time and time again, he said that he's going to put severe pressure on Russia. Some believe that's in the frame of more sanctions, more tariffs on third-party countries. Remember, there is a bill with 80 signatures in the House waiting to go to vote once Senate comes back after recess that wants to impose up to 200%, up to 500% extra tariffs and penalties on countries doing business with Russia in one way or the other. So, that's one aspect of it. And those are the tools that President Trump believes he has in his toolbox. But he's also made very clear that he hopes he doesn't have to use those. For the United States to find some kind of strategic partnership, and I know our guest mentioned this as well, even if it comes to the nuclear side of things with Vladimir Putin, with Russia, that's going to be a win as well. And then, you have the issue of Ukraine and, of course, European security and Ukrainian security, but also what kind of security guarantees Russia receives as well. These are all on the table. President Trump says he hopes that he doesn't have to take that path. But ultimately, he's also seen that once he said he's had good conversations with Vladimir Putin. And then, he's hung up the phone and he's seen that, Putin continues with his own policies and as if those conversations didn't happen. So I think he's trying to, relay to the people that could happen as well. But again, it's just very hard to imagine that something like that's going to happen because it's taken so much to get these two men in the same room.
Getting them in the same room, and also the fact that this meeting is taking place in itself between the two leaders. Apart from the fact that it's taking place on American soil, there are, so many aspects there that are crucial and that are also historic. But Susan, let's also talk about, the involvement of Ukraine and that big question of what all of this really means for Volodymyr Zelensky, who, of course, will be closely watching these developments. But the very fact is that Russia has also made its stance very clear as far as the involvement of Ukraine is concerned.
Yeah, we talk about the symbolism and the place that this is taking place. It's Alaska.
All right,
it's very far away from Ukraine. It's very far away.
Yes, Susan, I'll just come back to you. Those visuals of the U.S. President Donald Trump there, the highly anticipated moment that will lead into that crucial summit, the crucial meeting between the U.S. President and the Russian President on the Ukraine war, whether or not this will lead to a breakthrough or what the outcome will be. A number of questions at play, a number of factors at play here. And there we have the Russian President Vladimir Putin there disembarking. The very fact, like we were just discussing with our correspondent Susan Teherani, that this meeting is taking place between the two leaders, all that has happened in the run-up to this very significant moment where we have Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin coming face to face to discuss the Ukraine war, that in itself is a significant step. But like we've been discussing with our correspondents and with the experts through the day about the expectations that the two sides are coming to the table with, and also that big question mark, like we were just discussing with our correspondent there, over the involvement of Ukraine. Those historic images of the two leaders walking on the red carpet, coming to you all the way from Alaska. This meeting taking place on American soil. Vladimir Putin coming face to face with U.S. President Donald Trump. That red carpet welcome, followed by the U.S. President receiving Vladimir Putin. In a significant gesture, in fact, Donald Trump welcoming Vladimir Putin. Remember, we had told you earlier about the significance of the symbolism at play there as well. And there we have that crucial handshake taking place, smiles being exchanged by the two leaders, US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, walking on the red carpet in Alaska, which is hosting that crucial meeting on the Ukraine war. Over the next few hours, what we have been discussing and laying out in terms of the expectations, in terms of the agenda, and also what all of this means for the Russia-Ukraine war and for Ukraine, all of that culminating into this very moment.
President Putin, will you agree to a ceasefire?
Mr. President, what's your message to Vladimir Putin?
Mr. Putin, did you underestimate Ukraine? President Putin, will you stop killing civilians? President Putin, how can the U.S. trust your words?
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Let's go. Come on, guys. White House staff.
We're still holding for a minute. The driver's here.
All right, so what we just witnessed, followed by that handshake and the exchange of smiles, some questions being thrown at the two leaders by the media that had gathered there. The Russian president gesturing, the US president also exchanging some words there, and then the two getting into that vehicle. A very significant moment. Like we've been discussing, this is just the start of a crucial few hours ahead for the entire world, in fact. As far as the Russia-Ukraine war is concerned, will it end or not is the big question that's hanging on. Apart from that, to what extent and at what point will Ukraine get involved? What all of this means for Europe at large? How do things change, if at all, from here onwards? How do the two leaders react to the negotiations? What happens over the next few hours will chart the course for a lot of those developments at play. Vladimir Putin on American soil after 10 years, being received by US President Donald Trump there, like we just witnessed in Alaska, which is the host of that crucial meeting. The Trump-Putin handshake marking the beginning of that crucial day ahead. All right, let's just quickly go back across to our correspondent, Susan Tehrani. Susan, I interrupted you there right when we saw the two leaders emerging. Go ahead with the point that you were making regarding what all of this means specifically for Ukraine as we continue to track those images. Let's also talk about, for those unaware, what happens over the next few hours.